Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Last time, we did a little video on a commercial that I shot, one of 3 that we did in a single day, and we went through sort of the background, the decisions that you make before you're actually there on the day, and you have to deal with all of the complications that you have inflicted on yourself, right? The choices that you make in pre-production, that's what you're going to have to, eventually you're going to have to pay the piper. Eventually you're going to have to deal with whatever problems you have just created for yourself. And that day is now, right? We're going to talk about all of the little things that we do once we've decided on the angle, once we've decided on the coverage, what system it is it going to be a bar scene, is it going to be an office scene, is it going to be a dining room table scene? We know there's 5 scenes, right? If you want to know what those 5 scenes are, or you want to know more about them, the link is in the description below. I made this stuff all up. That doesn't mean it isn't true, but it works for me. Okay, so I need first blocking. As soon as we got the blocking done, how are we going to put the framework into action? Why the framework? Because I know the framework looks nice. So I've got lots of choices to make in pre-production and on set on the day. I need to compress all of that information into the easiest possible system for my little pea brain to figure out. And that's exactly what I do. That's what the framework is. And I'm just trying to guide the project to seeing the framework. We talked about it all in the last video. If you haven't seen that one, the link will be in the description below. Also, if you like this content, if you want me to do more of this stuff on my own commercial work and on other people's, although some people get upset. They say, well, with the other projects, you're just guessing. Guess what I'm doing on my own projects, people? I'm guessing, right? I'm guessing. Yeah, I mean, I know what fixtures we actually used here, but it doesn't matter what fixtures I actually use. In fact, I can't even remember. I'll give you the idea, the rough idea of how we got this stuff, but I don't know like exactly what the model of 12K or 6K that we used or the diffusion that I would call for, just like softer or harder. I like softer. Okay, move that in. What happens when you have soft light? Now we have to add contrast by adding more neg. These are the situations. Okay, so even though I did shoot this, I don't know half of this stuff. Right? I'm just making it up on the day and then immediately goes in one ear, out the other. And you got yourself a little career. Okay, so yeah, if you like this kind of stuff, Patreon, the best way to support the channel. Plus I do a breakdown every single week over there, plus all sorts of extra content. And if you like breakdowns in general, listen to the podcast, Wandering DP Podcast. It's 10 years now. All the background information on this project will be episode number 452. 452. Okay. Let's get into it. Just a quick rehash of what we did last video. We had our storyboard chat. We know this is an office scene, 2 people looking at each other. We know how that's going to affect the coverage. We're shooting with 2 cameras, Cooke anamorphic full frame lenses, and we know that we scheduled this for the afternoon. Now, this is the biggest thing that we're going to have to deal with on set. Here, if we make this slightly bigger, and we come here. Okay, so you see what's happening here on the ground, right? This is hot. Hot is not good when we're shooting in such a dark environment. Okay, those are 2 extremes. We're gonna have to balance those extremes. The way that you do this, or the way that I like to do it, is let's balance to what we can't control. So if we take this information, just remember, this is the sun path, right? We're shooting between 3:30 and 6 o'clock. That is our window to get 12 different shots. So number 1, we can't be spending all day relighting, especially when we switch from one angle to another angle. What do I mean by that? Let's go to our look. So this is the stills. This is the wide shot. Then we've got our coverage once we flop to the other side of the line, his and hers. What I mean is this direction, shooting all of this stuff. Let's see, that shot, then the closer shot, then the even closer shot. This is easy. You do this all in a row. Why? Because the lighting is the exact same. Okay, so we're going to shoot out one angle, and then we're going to flop, and we're going to shoot out his angle. Okay? That switch takes a lot of time. What doesn't take a lot of time? It takes the most time in a scene. The other one that takes the most amount of time is setting up this lighting, because this lighting is going to be completely different than this lighting. Okay, this lighting, we have complete control. We can do whatever we want over here because we never see it. So this is where we add our 6K through a 12x, through a 4x frame, softened it all off, get it in the right position so it just hits the other cheek. We take down the level on this highlight so it isn't too distracting. Same here. And you do that just by adding some diffusion on the background there. Like here, we just add diffusion on the other side of this outdoor area. And then that sets the level here, right? Because we really, the only thing we can't control here is this up here, right? So we set our exposure to what we can't control. What does that mean? That means you come over here with the camera and you look through the camera and you use the iris on the lens and you set the level that you want this to look like. Okay, now let's say that's, T16. I know I want to be shooting wide open. On the Cook lenses, whatever that is, that's T2.1 or something like that. So then we have to add all the ND to let me shoot at a wide open aperture and to get that looking exactly how I want it. So how many stops is that? 2, 8, 4, 5, 6, 8, 11, 16. That's 6 stops of ND I need to have if I want to shoot wide open for this. Okay? That's how you get that figure. Then, once that is set, then you're adding the level here. Okay? Then you're adding the 6K, or I think in this case, we used a combination. We used the 6K bounce. Oh, no, not a bounce. We used the 6K through a 12 by frame. Okay, so you got a big light over here. That's a terrible light. You got a light over here. It shines through, usually goes through a 4 by frame, then it goes through a 12 by frame, and then it hits this person in the face. So there's lots of different steps in there that you can manipulate how much level you're getting out of the thing. Number one, are you using something thick in the 4 by frame, right? Are you using something thick in the 12 by frame? Those are all the ways you can manipulate the levels. So the most important thing is set to what you can control. We come back here to the wide shot. Now, remember, in the last video, I talked about this is the most difficult shot. And this is the shot that I will most often screw up. Why? Because you want this to feel like, oh, it sort of is. Look at, there's just ambient, like level coming from the ground out here. Oops. Like maybe the sun, because it's above the frame, maybe it's hitting the ground and it's bouncing in. But if you remember the location photos, it's pitch black dark in here. And I'm trying to save the sky out here. And even on something that has as much dynamic range as the Alexa, this is going to be a problem. But remember, I'm giving myself the best chance to save this. How am I doing that? I want to be ISO 1600, 2000, 2500. I want to ride the ISO way, 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 way up. That's going to protect for all of my highlights. Even if you have something like an Alexa sensor, which is fantastic in the highlights, I'm still going to want to pad myself the most that I can. Because if I have to add more level in here, I know that added level, no matter how much time I have to manipulate or to play with it, it's always going to feel a little bit fake. So I want as little of that as possible to make it feel as natural as I possibly can. So here, what we have is we've got sun over the top, and just here is the line created by the overhang that creates the shadow, right? Just out of frame here. And then on the other side of that, we're bouncing all of this light in, okay? So I'm setting to what I can't control, which is this sky, setting the exposure, and then I'm bouncing in more level. As soon as we do that, remember, I wanted to be on the dark side of the line for the flop. Now this becomes infinitely easier, right? This is the framework. If you don't know what the framework is, and I got tons of back videos, and the podcast is essentially that for years and years and years. I want to be shooting into the shadow, and I'm trying to create as much contrast as I can. I want lots of stuff in the frame. I want to make the viewer work as hard as possible to see our little, our talent. Because I know we're going to go in, we're going to do the coverage, but you got to mix it up and make it interesting. Why is the pen small all of a sudden? Right? I want to make it more interesting. Give me stuff to shoot through. Give me depth. Give me contrast. Give me light or dark to light to 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 dark. Ba-ba, ba-ba, ba-ba. You see where this is going, right? This is a song that we play. Also, over there is a big giant. There's a break here, right? Which is where people enter and exit the garage. If we come here, you can actually see it, right? There's this giant thing over here. And if you remember in the last video, I've set this up so that Old Mate doesn't leave this way like he was originally intended to, because he'd be walking out there into this nonsense. I've got him walking this way. Why? Because I can use another 12 by to cover that up, to control that level, so he doesn't become nuclear hot when he exits the frame. Okay, so again, just something to think about. So let's go back to this shot, because this really eyes it up. We had all that bounce coming in before. The big reset is, okay, let's go from this shot, where we've got all of our stands and all of our light, we're all balanced for one single shot, to, okay, now the camera's going to come in here on the other side of this guy, and we're going to look this way. Okay, so what we're going to add is we're going to soften off or control the level on the light that is leaking through here, because the light that is leaking through here shows up in two different spots. It shows up on her face, and it shows up in the foreground here. So I know that ahead of time. I want control of that. How do I get control of that? I put diffusion right on the outsides of these things, right? If I put them on the inside, well, then it starts to spread the light all around. It doesn't look natural. If I put them on the outside, then the wood and the little holes in the wood, they act as natural cutters, and it ends up looking quite natural. So bounce on this stuff and a little 6K, and then we come here, and now I want mirror. I use a mirror. I don't use a mirror. It's like I tell the gaffer, hey, I need way more level in here than just a little 6K is going to get us. So he takes a couple of 4x mirrors, punches them through the 12 by 12, and now we have way more level than a 6K is going to give us. But remember, we also have the 6K. So the 6K, which is much more mobile than the mirrors, because remember, the sun is up here. It's going to go this way. It's going to bounce off the mirror, and it's going to be really bright. It's going to go through the 12 by, and it's going to give us this. Okay, this little section. Now, next up is going to be the 6K, which is also through a frame, but because I don't need it to be in the sun, I need the mirror to be in the sun to actually reflect the sun. The 6K, I can have that in the shade, right? Because it's not natural. And I can push that through the shaded area to wrap the light more. Okay, and you can see it here probably the best. This, and you see her highlight here? That is the 6K. Can we go any closer? Surely we can. Let's see if I botch this. See how there's really 3 highlights, isn't there? It's one big one here. That's our mirror bounce. And then this little tiny one, that is the 6K. That's the wrap. That's this. Okay, and you can also see the amount of diffusion that we have on that back window now is really playing up here because I just slightly moved her further down. That's the combination that we're doing. And then all of this blacks, all of this neg over here, all of this taking away the contrast, generally you would have to add that. I can't remember if we did have to add that, but that would be like on the list. Definitely talking to the grips beforehand saying, hey, we need this entire wall, this one, to be blacked out. Now, we didn't do it here because we needed those slats, but I'm sure maybe it's like a floppy just off to the side here, just to take down any of the contrast in that foreground. So taking all that down, balancing for that. This mirror, I know we had to move that once or twice. And you're thinking, why? Like we had to reposition it so you couldn't see the gear. And in fact, I think that's one of the stands. That might be the stand to the 6K over there. You can just see it out of focus. Let's go a little bit closer. Is that the, yeah, that is the stand, right? That's the stand. Now you're thinking, well, if you had to reposition it a couple times, why leave it in there, right? Why? It doesn't make any sense. Why not just take it out of there? Because if you take it out of there, guess what happens? It gets really flat in this corner. It all ends up looking quite gray and one level. This mirror, any reflection, it's a great way to get instant highlight. And you know that we want highlight for interest. That's what we want. This is a free highlight. But again, it all comes back from balancing here. Over here is that 12 by that's determining this level. You see how soft this level is? Like this shadow, which is so gradual, that comes from the 12 by frame. If you didn't have that, it would be really harsh. It would be, let's see, it's probably better in the wide. It'd be like this harsh, right? All the way shooting through here, which would be really hot, which means inside would be, oh, she's got her mic there. Hello, you got your microphone there. It would be really, really hot. And then if we balanced for that heat, right? If we adjusted exposure because of that, rather than taking it down with a rag, this would be super dark, which means we'd have to pump way more level in here to get these ratios back. So you're always thinking in ratios the entire time as you're building out. And this is what I'm doing when I'm sitting there doing nothing, right? Well, everyone else is working on set. In between these shots, you're like, oh my God, if this 6K isn't enough, we're going to have to add the mirror, right? If the mirror isn't enough, we're going to have to take down this level over here. If we take down that level, then I can soften off the 6 more, make it feel more natural. And then when we do the flop, I'm going to have to do the same thing. Now I reposition everything, okay? And as we reposition the 6K and the mirror for, let's see if we go in again. Go in so we can see his face. Okay, you can see his highlight here. We got the contrast. Now, it's a little bit less contrasty. Why? Because he's probably getting bounce from over here, right? See how less contrast there is between this side of the face and this side of the face? That's because it's such a wide shot that we can't get in there and do that amount of contrast. Like this amount of contrast is all fake, right? But I like it better. I think it looks better. I wish I could do that here, but I can't, so I don't. But you can see just how long those shadows have gotten now. because it's whatever, 45 minutes later, right? We're racing the sun to try and get this job done. Also, back here behind him is a wall. It's actually another building back there. And this building ends there, and then the other one starts there. There was a huge leak of light back here. So we just got the grips to tape a black to the top to completely kill all that spill. You see the little shafts coming through that I talked about. Again, here we play these shafts to the exact level that we want. And these are little fixes that take no time. If there's a fix that I can do in a minute or 2 minutes, and I can judge A or B, like which one do I like better, A or B? That doesn't mean that A or B is the best choice. It's just, I'd rather have a choice than no choice. So I'm setting myself up for, okay, let's put a rag over here to control that level in the foreground. Let me see it, on and off it. Yep, good. No, get it out. And then we go. And the reverse, this is the one that takes the most time because we have to change the position of the mirror and we have to change the position of the 6K and then we have to rebalance it to this new scenario. This, I wanted to show, this is just, like we had a B cam rolling the entire time. Every single shot we had a B camera, but it was really, we only used it for one specific section, which was this emotional part, just in case the talent has trouble getting through lots of different emotional things, or maybe there's one thing that's just very unique to one take or another. It's sometimes good to have coverage of 2 different angles. Plus we were doing 36 shots, 3 commercials in a single day. You got to get through it really, really fast. Okay, I think that's it. Right? Is there any other things that I would add for lighting? No. Balance to what you can't control. But really, all of this look, like the way that you get this shot, which is probably, this is probably my favorite shot of the ad. This shot, this balance, this whole entire setup, it came from all the way back when we were doing pre-production. It came from that original location scout where you say, hey, can we, oops, go back here. In these boards, rather than shooting it from this side of the line, can we go to the other side? And the director goes, yeah, if you think it's going to look better. And you go, it'll definitely look better. You're like, oh, then the main job is, do you know what you're talking about? Are you actually going to screw it up? Because if you say it's going to look better and it doesn't, or if you say it's going to look better and it takes 5 hours to do, and you've only got 2 hours to shoot the thing, you're in trouble. Luckily, we made it out. Did you learn anything? Is this better than doing it in the podcast form? I don't know. It certainly takes a lot more work to lay all this stuff out rather than just doing a podcast. But I don't know. You tell me if this stuff is helpful. I think there's a lot more to it, which is why I wanted to do it in this sort of split factor, one podcast, one video on the subject, because there's a lot more than just the lighting that goes into it. Like if I just showed you this still, I'd be like, oh yeah, well, we lit it with the 6K and the mirror bounce and a little bit of neg and then some diffusion over here. But those decisions were made weeks in advance. So if you don't know that you're going to do this thing, you're in trouble, right? And just remember, we got 2 hours to do this. It's not like you're sitting around having a meeting with the grips and the gaffer and everybody and going like, okay, gaffer, you do this, grip, you do this, and I want it done exactly like that. That's not how it works. In the real world, you say, you give them an idea ahead of time, and then maybe you have like, okay, the 6K isn't working. We need the mirror, like check up the mirror. But you should have already had that conversation before you even got to the scene going like, hey, if the 6K isn't enough, let's have a backup option. That backup option can be whatever you want, gaffer. Or if it was me, I would do it with a mirror, or I would do it with a 12K, or I would do it with whatever solution. That way you're just bringing them up to speed, because it's like, is your original plan ever going to work first up? Maybe, if you're good, but let's be honest, we're not good. Not me, not you. That's life. Okay, that's our look at this little commercial. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment down below or not. Up to you. Okay, that's going to do it for this one. Many thanks. We'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.